She saw the ring, heard another woman claim it, and walked away without a word. Now he's back, silent, steady, always near, never touching, just waiting. What if the truth she ran from was the one thing he never stopped trying to give her? The Thorne and Wallace 10-year anniversary gala was nothing short of spectacle. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked Manhattan's skyline. Soft golden light bounced off crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. The clink of flutes and muted conversations filled the air, underscored by the subtle rhythms of a live string quartet. To everyone else in this room, it was a celebration of power and prestige. To me, it was the night I believed my life was about to change. I stood near the back of the ballroom, my hands clasped in front of me, wrapped in a slate-gray satin gown that hugged my frame and trailed slightly behind me like smoke. My name was Isla, senior strategist at Thorne and Wallace Capital. I wasn't flashy, but my presence in this firm mattered. The deal that pushed us into Forbes' top 10 had my fingerprints all over it. And tonight, it was also my birthday. But that wasn't the real reason my pulse danced behind my ribs. It was Julian. Julian Thorne. My secret. My partner of 3 very private years. The man no one knew I belonged to. He had always been private, painfully so. Not because he was ashamed, but because the walls around his life were built out of hard-learned caution. In his world, privacy equaled safety. And I had accepted that. Supported it. Loved him anyway. But 2 nights ago something shifted. We had just returned from a meeting with the Shanghai team. Exhausted, jet-lagged, sitting cross-legged on the floor of his penthouse at midnight, sharing takeout. I'd made some offhand joke about how the world would probably learn we were married from a legal filing in the company merger. Julian had looked at me then, really looked, and said softly, "That changes this weekend." I didn't press. I didn't ask. But something in my chest bloomed. That morning I stopped by his office to drop off a confidential memo. He wasn't in. I hadn't meant to snoop, but the drawer of his sleek mahogany desk was slightly ajar. A small black velvet ring box peeked out. My fingers paused over the edge. The box was engraved with silver lettering. My initials. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. My breath caught and I walked away quickly, heart thudding with something close to disbelief. He was going to propose. Tonight. At the gala. The clock inched toward 8:15 p.m. I scanned the room for Julian's familiar tall frame, but he hadn't arrived yet. That wasn't unusual. He hated galas. Avoided press. He likely wanted to make an entrance at just the right moment. I turned my attention to the stage as Harrison Wallace, co-founder and ever the showman, raised a glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Before we begin the formal awards, we have a very special announcement." I blinked. No mention of this was in the agenda. Then came the real shock. Harrison grinned. "Our brilliant director of global project strategy, Ms. Vanessa Hale, has something to share." I stiffened. Vanessa. Vanessa Hale had joined the firm just over 2 months ago. A high-profile transfer from our Dubai office. Polished. Eloquent. Calculated. The kind of woman who always seemed to be one compliment away from getting everything she wanted. She stepped on stage in a crimson dress that shimmered under the lights, heels clicking like punctuation. "Thank you, Harrison," she said into the mic, her voice soft and theatrical. She turned to the audience, then smiled, directly at me. My skin prickled. "I didn't think I'd say this tonight," she said, feigning bashfulness. "But when something wonderful happens in your life, it's hard to keep it to yourself." The crowd leaned in. Murmurs. Raised brows. No one knew what she was talking about. She lifted her left hand. The diamond glinted. Bold, classic, unmistakably high-end. Platinum twist band, oval center stone. One I had seen before. "I'm engaged," she announced. Scattered applause broke out, confused but polite. To Julian Thorne. Silence. Then a wave of stunned gasps rolled through the ballroom like thunder. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I didn't understand. Laughter rippled as some people clapped again, now with energy. Others looked at each other with disbelief. The PR director froze mid-step. Harrison Wallace blinked. One junior associate let out a whisper that cut straight through me. "Wait, wasn't he dating someone else?" I thought. But they didn't finish the sentence. Because the crowd had begun to applaud more loudly now, laughing, reacting, moving toward Vanessa to offer congratulations. Someone turned toward me. Emily from Business Ops, blinking in confusion. Isla, are you okay? I blinked. My voice didn't come. On the stage, Vanessa smiled wider, turning slightly to showcase the ring again. Julian couldn't make it in time, but he told me to go ahead. He said it was time. I saw a few heads turn toward the doors, expecting Julian to enter any second. He didn't. I took one step back. Someone was speaking to me, but the words blurred into noise. The ring on Vanessa's finger. It was the same one. The same twisted platinum band. The same stone. The one Julian had bookmarked on his laptop during our Milan trip. I had helped him choose it. Only now, it was on someone else's hand. My fingers were numb around the stem of my glass. I managed to place it on a nearby table before it slipped. The heat behind my eyes didn't come with tears. Just a blank, echoing silence in my chest. He'd promised. In his own quiet, steady way. He had told me you are mine. And I had believed him. I stared at Vanessa's smug smile. At the ring that should have been mine. At the stage where my love story had been hijacked and twisted into a cruel display. My mind didn't allow anger yet. Only cold shock. The world tilted. My phone buzzed. I slowly reached into my clutch, hand trembling. Julian, text. On my way now. Did the gift arrive early? Hope I didn't ruin the surprise. Wait for me. Surprise. Wait for me. I stared at the words, trying to make them fit what I was seeing. Trying to believe there was still a version of reality where I was not the fool. But I couldn't see it. Not when the world around me was clapping for someone else. And still Julian hadn't arrived. The cameras were flashing. The rumors already forming. And I stood alone. In the dress I had picked for the night, I thought he would ask me to be his forever. The air outside the ballroom was colder than expected for early spring, but I didn't feel it. I walked slowly at first, gripping the edges of my clutch like it was the only thing holding me together. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses faded behind me as I moved farther from the glass doors. No one followed. No one noticed. Which, in some strange way, made it easier. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I just left. I turned off my phone before the second buzz could come. I didn't want to see another message from Julian. There was nothing left for him to say. Not after Vanessa. Not after the ring. My apartment was a 15-minute ride from the gala, but the cab felt like it took hours. I stared out the window, watching city lights streak like tears across the glass. My thoughts were silent and screaming all at once. Maybe I should have waited. Confronted him. Demanded an explanation. But wasn't the public spectacle explanation enough? If the ring was for me, wouldn't he have said something? Wouldn't he have told the truth before someone else did? Instead, I was the only one left unspoken for. The thought gutted me. By the time I reached my apartment, the gown felt suffocating. I stepped out of it and into an oversized sweatshirt and leggings, then sat cross-legged on the living room floor, staring at my turned-off phone. Julian Thorne. The man I thought I'd marry. 3 years of my life wrapped in silence and shadow. Never public, always private. I told myself it was fine. That I didn't need grand gestures or social media validation. But in the end, someone else got the ring. Someone else got the name. And I wasn't even acknowledged. I typed my resignation before sunrise. To hr@thornwallace.com. Subject: Formal resignation. Dear Miss Caldwell, please consider this my formal resignation from my role as Senior Strategy Lead, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunities I've had over the past 4 years. I will not be returning to the office. Please send any paperwork to my forwarding email. Islamatics. No drama. No accusation. Just an exit. The next day, I booked a one-way train ticket to a remote coastal town 3 hours north. It was quiet, scenic, and unknown to everyone I once worked with. I didn't even take a suitcase, just a duffel bag with enough clothes to last a few weeks, a tablet and a notebook. By the time Julian walked into the ballroom, I was already gone. Inside the gala, Julian Thorne stepped into the glittering chaos and immediately sensed something was off. Guests were buzzing in clusters. Harrison Wallace gave him a thumbs up from across the room. A few assistants from legal clapped as he passed. A woman he didn't recognize said, "Congratulations," as he moved toward the main stage. Julian frowned. "Thank you." He scanned the room for Isla. She was the only reason he had even come. He hated these events. But this time he wanted her to see it. see that he was done hiding. That their love deserved light. He hadn't planned a grand proposal in public, but he had a velvet box in his inner jacket pocket. Inside it was a ring oval cut with twisted platinum bands and the initials IM engraved on the inside. He was going to take her home tonight and ask her in the quiet, private way they both cherished. He didn't see her anywhere. Then he spotted Vanessa Hale. Wearing red. Surrounded by people. Smiling wide. And wearing his ring. It took him half a second to understand what he was looking at. Then another to deny it. His feet moved without command, cutting across the ballroom until he stood within earshot of the circle surrounding her. She's glowing. I can't believe it, you and Julian? That's wild. When's the wedding? Vanessa lifted her hand again, showing off the ring. We're keeping it quiet, but yes. It's official. Julian's voice was steel when he spoke. What exactly is official? Everyone turned. The crowd around Vanessa fell silent. Her smile froze for half a beat. Then she chuckled and tossed her hair. There you are. I told them you'd be here soon. Julian's jaw tightened. Why are you wearing that? Don't be silly, darling. You said I could share the news. I said no such thing. Nervous laughter rippled. Vanessa blinked. Maybe not in so many words, but, last night? That toast? The wine. It was obvious what you meant. I didn't propose to you. Her face paled. Julian turned to the others. This is a misunderstanding. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. Julian, please. Don't do this here. He leaned in, his voice dangerously calm. Where is Isla? Vanessa blinked. Isla. Where is she? He repeated. I don't know. I haven't seen her since earlier tonight. Julian didn't respond. He was already moving. He pulled out his phone and dialed Isla's number. Voicemail. He tried again. Nothing. He opened their message thread and saw that his last text, "Did the gift arrive early? Wait for me," was delivered but unread. No blue tick. No response. He texted again. Julian. I'm here. What's going on? Call me. No reply. He dialed again. This time the call failed immediately. His number had been blocked. Julian's chest tightened. He left the gala without saying a word to anyone. By the time his car reached Isla's apartment, the sky was dark and the city was quiet. He buzzed her unit. No answer. He buzzed again. Still nothing. Then a tenant exiting the building let him in without question. He was Julian Thorne after all. Everyone knew him. He took the elevator up, heartbeat pounding, gut tight. The door to her apartment was locked, but the small gap beneath it gave away the truth. No light. No sound. He knocked once. Twice. No answer. He leaned his forehead against the cool wood for a moment, breathing in. Then he slid down to the floor and pulled out his phone again. And that's when he saw it. An email forwarded by HR to his assistant and now to him. Subject. Formal resignation. Islamatics. His vision blurred for a moment as he read it. Short. Professional. Permanent. She was gone. Julian had always prided himself on being the calm in the storm. Boardroom on fire? Stay composed. Markets crashing? Respond strategically. Betrayal from within his own company? That was new. And it shattered something in him. He sat in the back of his car, the city moving past like a blurred painting, the resignation email still open on his phone. His name, his company, his reputation, none of it mattered in that moment. Because Isla was gone. Gone without a word. Gone with a heart full of misunderstanding. And all because someone he had barely paid attention to stood on a stage and dared to wear a lie on her hand. He gripped the velvet box still hidden in his jacket pocket. The real ring. The one with IM engraved beneath the platinum swirl. The one she was supposed to wear tonight. The one he still hadn't given her. He didn't go home. Instead, he walked into the office tower at 2:17 a.m., swiped his keycard and took the elevator to the executive floor. The security guard on duty blinked but said nothing. Everyone knew not to question Julian Thorne when his jaw was clenched like that. He went straight to his office. Sat down. Pulled open his laptop. Then froze. The ring design. Gone. He always kept it in a locked folder labeled Archive 99, buried beneath decoy spreadsheets. But the folder was missing. No recent items. No backups. Julian was methodical. Meticulous. This shouldn't be possible. Plus, his fingers flew across the keyboard. He opened the activity log, a file recording every time his system had been accessed. And there was March 11th, 11:48 p.m. Accessed by Vanessa.h. She had been in his office. She had accessed his files. She had seen the ring. He didn't sleep. By 7 a.m. he was waiting in the glass conference room on the 47th floor. Vanessa walked in at 7:36 a.m. acting surprised to see him. "Julian," she said, tucking her hair behind one ear. "Rough night." He stood. "Sit." She blinked. He didn't wait for her to comply. He opened a folder on the table. Inside were 2 printed documents. The security footage showing her entering his office after hours. With a log file confirming her device accessed, Archive 99. "I'll ask once," he said coldly. "Did you steal the ring design from my computer?" Her smile faltered. "Julian, You wore a ring that matched exactly. The setting, the cut, the engraving style. You announced an engagement I never offered. You lied." "I didn't lie," she snapped suddenly. "You and we had something." "No," he interrupted. "We didn't." Vanessa stood. "I saw the design. You left it open. I thought, maybe it was a message. You always kept things quiet just like with Isla. I thought you were waiting for someone worth the risk." His eyes narrowed. "So you made a fake ring, called in favors, and announced it publicly." Her face crumpled into something between panic and defiance. "No one was supposed to react like that. I thought it would push you. I thought maybe you'd look at me differently if the world did first." Julian stared at her. "You didn't just steal a design. You stole my future." He tried to speak. He held up a hand. "You're done here. Legal has already been briefed. You're on record. This isn't just termination. This is theft, defamation, and corporate misconduct." Her face drained of color. He turned toward the door. "You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. Security will escort you out." It should have felt like victory. It didn't. By noon, Vanessa was gone. The PR team was in lockdown mode. HR was managing damage control. But none of it mattered. Because Isla still didn't know the truth. She hadn't waited to hear it. She had believed the lie. And he couldn't even blame her. Julian returned to his office, poured a neat glass of scotch and sat down heavily behind his desk. He pulled out the real ring again. It was heavier now. Not because of the metal, but the weight of everything it had failed to represent. He turned it over in his palm. Then he looked at the surveillance screenshot again. Vanessa's image, blurry but unmistakable as she leaned over his desk that night and plugged in her USB. He stared at the photo, and then at the ring, and realized, even with proof, how do you convince someone who's already disappeared? Julian stood behind the mahogany podium in the Thorne and Wallace press briefing room. The same room he'd launched 3 international merger announcements from, the same one where Fortune had once said, "He speaks with the sharpness of a scalpel." But today he wasn't here to cut deals. Today he was here to speak the truth. Journalists crowded the seats, phones and cameras aimed straight at him. The room had been buzzing with rumors for days, especially after Vanessa's abrupt departure and the mysterious absence of the firm's star strategist, the woman most credited for their billion-dollar portfolio. The lie had spread quickly. The cleanup had been too quiet. So now he would say it. Not to fix headlines. But for her. He adjusted the mic. "I'd like to clarify a statement that was falsely made during our anniversary gala last weekend. Ms. Vanessa Hale announced an engagement between herself and me. That claim was entirely fabricated. No such proposal took place. No relationship exists between Ms. Hale and myself and never has." Flashbulbs went off like fireworks. Murmurs swelled. Julian kept his voice steady. "I also want to address the fallout that followed. Due to the confusion surrounding that announcement, someone I cared deeply about was hurt. Her privacy has always been my priority, which is why I won't name her today. But I will say this clearly. The ring Vanessa wore that night was a replica. It was modeled after a private design, one meant for someone else entirely. A woman I have loved, for years." Another explosion of cameras. His throat burned, but he pressed on. She had no idea that ring had been stolen. And when she left, she didn't leave because I proposed to someone else. She left because I didn't protect the truth fast enough. He swallowed. I didn't speak in time. But I am speaking now. The clip aired within the hour. Every financial media outlet, every social feed, every stock blog, all buzzing with the same quote. The woman I love left because I didn't protect the truth fast enough. But only one woman recognized the weight of that line. 3 hours north, in a town with more boats than buildings, Isla stood behind the counter of the tiny seaside bookstore where she'd begun working just 2 weeks ago. It smelled like salt and old pages. Quiet. Peaceful. A world that didn't know who she was, or what she'd left behind. She had been shelving poetry books when her phone buzzed. A Google alert she had forgotten to unsubscribe from. Her name. Linked to Julian Thorne. Her chest tightened. She opened the link slowly, prepared for more pain. Another twist of humiliation. Another headline she'd have to bury beneath her new identity. But then, there he was. On video. Standing behind a podium, hair slightly disheveled, sleeves rolled back. His voice. Low, controlled but vulnerable. She left because I didn't protect the truth fast enough. He didn't say her name. Didn't have to. He knew. It was her ring. Her name he couldn't say aloud. Isla dropped the phone on the counter, her breath catching. Everything okay? Called Sarah, the bookstore's owner, from the back. Isla nodded stiffly. Yeah. I'm just going to step out for a minute. She walked out to the porch, sat on the wooden bench facing the harbor and stared at the ocean for a long time. She remembered the ring he had shown her months ago, not openly but subtly. He had asked her what she thought of asymmetrical settings, of twisted bands, of inscriptions with hidden meanings. He joked, if I ever propose, it'll be with a ring no one else would understand but you. And now, she realized he meant it. Vanessa hadn't received that ring. She had stolen the idea. Isla should have known. But she had panicked. Let silence feel like betrayal. And left before he could speak. Now the whole world knew the truth. And yet, something still hurt. Because for 3 years she'd loved him quietly. Secretly. And even though he was telling the truth now, he still hadn't come for her. Back in the city, Julian stood by his office window, staring at the skyline like it might offer a map to her. The press conference had bought him some grace. Some public clarity. But it hadn't brought Isla back. He had sent messages to mutual friends. No response. Even Rachel, his assistant, had tried to trace Isla's apartment lease, but the forwarding address was blank. She had erased herself with frightening efficiency. Only one lead remained. Julian's phone buzzed. It was an old friend from HR, Daniel. We don't have her listed on any active address files. But she used our mental health support line a year ago, remember? She gave a reference location for emergency backup. Her aunt's name in Westmore Bay. Julian's heartbeat stilled. Westmore Bay. Population, less than 5,000. Coastal. Quiet. Forgettable. She would go there. She would disappear there. But he would find her. The air in Westmore Bay carried the scent of sea salt driftwood, and a kind of stillness Julian hadn't felt in years. No horns. No glass towers. No streaming tickers with real-time stock movement. Just quiet. The town looked like it belonged in a postcard. A few cobblestone streets, sailboats bobbing in the harbor and storefronts with hand-painted signs. It was the kind of place people ran to when they were done being known. Julian parked his black rental SUV in front of a coffee shop called the Grey Gull, slipped on his sunglasses and stepped out. He didn't look like a runaway lover or a corporate giant here. He looked like a man completely out of place. Perfect. He had spent the night mapping out every address that shared the surname Maddox, cross-referenced with coastal employment records, until he narrowed it down to one name, Isla M., on the payroll for a shop called Cove and Spine Books. She'd found a bookstore. The thought made his throat ache. He didn't go in right away. Instead, he stood across the street under the awning of a closed shop and watched through the bookstore's wide front windows. Sunlight streamed through the panes, bathing the wooden floors in amber. She was inside, wearing a slate blue sweater, her hair loosely knotted at the nape of her neck. No makeup. No pretense. Just Isla. Filing books. Laughing softly with an older woman behind the counter. His hands tightened in his pockets. She looked okay. Not broken. Not like him. Julian waited until the other woman left for the back room. Then slowly he crossed the street. The door creaked when he opened it. She turned. Their eyes met. And for a second the entire universe narrowed to a single breath. Isla froze. The book in her hand slid back into its slot. Julian swallowed. Hi. She stared. No. That one word landed like a stone between them. She walked toward the back room but he stepped in front of her. I'm not here to hurt you. You already did. I needed to see you just once. Just to explain. Her jaw tightened. Explain what, Julian? That someone else wore the ring you never gave me? That I was supposed to understand your silence while she screamed her lies from a stage? He looked at her, devastated. I didn't know. Not until it was too late. Isla crossed her arms. And what? You thought a press conference would fix it? No, he said softly. I thought you should hear it from me. She didn't respond. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have told the world about you sooner. You never deserved to be anyone's secret. Not for a day. Not for 3 years. Isla's voice cracked. Then why did you keep me hidden? He hesitated. Because I was scared that if I put you in the spotlight, they'd ruin you like they ruin everything I care about. But by hiding you, I hurt you anyway. Tears rimmed her eyes but they didn't fall. I don't want explanations. Then what do you want? I want silence, she said. Peace. I came here to forget everything, especially you. Julian felt that like a bullet. She stepped around him. He turned to follow. Isla, please. I brought the ring. The real one. The one I designed for you. You helped design it and didn't even realize. I don't want it. You haven't even seen it. She stopped at the edge of the counter. Julian. I don't care what you brought. I care that you weren't there. That the moment I needed you to stand up, you were late. He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the black velvet box. Gently he placed it on the counter. This was always yours, he said. I just wasn't fast enough. And with that he left. Julian sat across from the bookstore for over an hour after that, parked in his car, waiting to see if she would come out. He never did. The ring stayed on the porch unopened. Still untouched. Like his apology. Back inside, Isla stood at the window long after he disappeared. She hadn't expected the ache in her chest. She had meant what she said, she wanted peace. But peace didn't come when someone left you flowers and apologies and a piece of their heart on your doorstep. It came in the silence after. She walked to the counter, slowly opened the ring box and stared at the piece inside. The twisted band. The center stone. The engraving beneath. The only one. A shaky breath left her lips. He had told the truth. Too late. But the truth all the same. It had been 6 days since Julian Thorne left the velvet ring box on the wooden porch of Cove and Spine Books. Isla had left it inside, untouched since. The words engraved beneath the stone haunted her. I'm the only one. She could hear him saying it. Not in some grand gesture, not in a ballroom, but quietly, the way he'd always meant things when they were real. And yet she hadn't seen him since that day. She thought maybe he had finally left. But the town told a different story. He's been working at the harbor, Sarah mentioned offhandedly while sorting through damaged donations. Tall guy. Black jacket. Doesn't talk much. Helped anchor the fishing boats during the tide surge last night. Isla didn't respond. He paid for everyone's coffee at the Grey Gull 2 days ago, Maggie, the cafe owner, chimed in. Didn't say a word. Just dropped a bill on the counter and left. Isla kept her hands busy restocking the fiction shelf. But her pulse betrayed her. Every morning after that, a coffee cup appeared on the bookstore's front steps before she opened. Just the way she liked it. Milk. No sugar. Extra hot. Every Wednesday, a worn second-hand book would be tucked into the return shelf. Books she had once told him she loved. The first was A Room with a View. The second, The Secret History. And on the third Wednesday she found a novel she hadn't seen in years. One she used to keep under her pillow as a girl. She hadn't mentioned it to anyone in years. She ran her hand over the cracked spine and whispered aloud. How did you remember? The storm hit Westmore Bay on a Friday. The rain rolled in like fury, wind snapping signs off hinges, lightning streaking the skies like battle lines. The bookstore had always held strong before, but that night the roof gave in. Water seeped through the old boards, pooling over the reading corner, soaking the rugs, curling the edges of rare prints. Isla and Sarah were rushing to cover the shelves when the back door banged open. Julian stood there, soaked, silent and steady. He didn't speak. He didn't wait. He stepped forward, grabbed a tarp and began covering the rare bookcases without a word. They worked in tandem. For the first time in weeks, Isla didn't push him away. He was too tired. Too soaked. Too raw. At one point she looked over and saw him wringing out a waterlogged rug with one hand and holding a stack of vintage maps in the other, eyes scanning for anything that could be salvaged. His white shirt clung to him. Rain dripped from his jaw. He looked completely out of place and yet not at all. "Why are you still here?" she asked quietly, her voice barely louder than the storm outside. Julian turned. His eyes met hers, gentle and unwavering. "Because you never stopped being home." The storm had passed, leaving behind a stillness that lingered like breath between two people standing too close but not touching. Inside the bookstore, sunlight leaked in through half-shuttered blinds, catching on dust motes and water-stained wood. The reading corner was half-dried. Some books had survived. Some hadn't. But the place was still standing and so were they. Julian stood a few feet from Isla, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, the sharp cut of his jaw more prominent in the glow. He was damp from effort, his shirt clinging in places, dirt smeared faintly along the edge of his collar. And yet he looked so steady. Too steady. Too composed. Isla wasn't sure whether it made her want to scream or reach out. They hadn't spoken much since he helped save the bookstore from the storm. Not really. Not beyond the practical. "Pass me that tarp. Hold the ladder." But now, there was silence. The kind that hummed. He stood close. Not close enough to touch. But closer than polite. His hand brushed against hers as they picked up a pile of dried classics from the floor. Neither of them moved away. His fingers lingered, just long enough to make her breath catch. When she looked up he was already looking at her. Not a glance. Look. Steady. Quiet. Wanting. And full of everything he wouldn't say. They sat outside the back porch later, tea in hand, the ocean sighing somewhere beyond the dunes. A worn plaid blanket lay folded on the bench between them. He made no move to cross the space. But his body faced hers. His legs turned slightly toward her. His fingers gripped the edge of the bench like they wanted to reach but didn't dare. Isla sipped her tea. "You keep showing up." Julian's voice was low. "You keep needing help. That's not why you stay." "No," he admitted. "It's not." She looked at him then, really looked. He was watching her the way someone watched stars. In awe, in silence, in the hope they didn't disappear too soon. "I don't know what to do with this," she murmured. "You don't have to do anything," he said softly. "I'll stay. Whether you forgive me or not. That's the problem. You're so patient it's infuriating." His lips curved slightly. "Would you prefer I force the issue?" She stared at the chipped edge of her cup. "No," she whispered. "I just wish I didn't care." He shifted. Not toward her. But not away either. The tension hung between them, taut as thread. Later, inside, she climbed a ladder to reshelve a top-row book. Julian stood beneath, steadying the legs. He didn't look up, not at first. But she glanced down and caught him staring, at her hand, at the way her fingers curled around the spine of a book. His jaw clenched just a little. His hands gripped the ladder tighter than necessary. He felt that look. She felt it in her ribs. She felt it in the parts of her heart she had buried the day she walked out of his life. That night they sat by the fireplace, a mug of cocoa each, saying nothing. Julian sat close. His knee brushed hers once, not by accident. Not fully. He looked down. Then at her. "I still dream about you," he said suddenly. Her fingers tightened around her mug. "I dream about what I should have said. What I should have done." Isla didn't reply. Because in that moment, her body already knew. Her pulse betrayed her. Her throat tightened. And still she didn't touch him. He didn't reach for her either. But every line of him screamed that he wanted to. The next day, Isla found the music box she'd once told him about. The one from her grandmother lost in a move years ago, waiting on the bookstore's counter. No note. Just the object. He was still speaking in gifs. That afternoon Vanessa called again. Julian didn't answer. Isla heard the name flash across his phone and watched as he silenced it without a word. The air tensed. She said nothing. Neither did he. But the gesture wasn't missed. He wanted her to see that he chose not to listen. And she did. Evenings became a rhythm. He brought her tea without asking. She no longer questioned it. He stayed close when she worked. Never in the way, always there. The space between them shrank inch by inch, never crossing the line. But his eyes said what he wouldn't. That he wanted to reach for her. That it burned in him to hold her. That he wouldn't move until she asked him to. And the hardest part? Isla wanted to. She lay awake one night, curled on the worn couch inside the shop, staring at the ring box he'd left untouched for weeks now. Still unopened. Still waiting. Like him. Like her. The next morning they were shelving the last of the salvaged paperbacks. Julian reached above her, just a little too close, to slide one back into place. His chest brushed lightly against her back. Just a whisper. He froze instantly. So did she. Her hand stilled on the cover of a book. His arm hovered above hers, waiting as if caught between retreat and surrender. He turned to him. Their faces were close. Too close. Breath mingled. Heartbeats tripped. He didn't touch her. But his eyes. His eyes held every word his mouth didn't dare speak. Tell me you still feel it. Tell me I'm not too late. He swallowed. Her voice was barely audible. Julian. He stepped back. A single careful inch. I'm sorry, he murmured, voice hoarse. I didn't say stop. His gaze snapped to hers. But she looked away, too fast. The wall was up again. Not because she didn't care. But because she cared too much. That night they sat outside again. Tea untouched. Silence blooming between them. Finally she whispered, Why haven't you tried to kiss me? Julian turned to her. Because I already hurt you by assuming too much. And if I want you to try? His jaw tightened. He didn't move. But his voice cracked as he said, Then tell me. Just once. Isla looked at him, long and unblinking. Then looked away. He exhaled through his nose and turned his face to the sea. And still he stayed. The Langston Estate Chapel was filled with soft golden light and the quiet hum of anticipation. Rows of elegantly dressed guests sat in hushed expectation, bouquets of cream orchids adorning every pew. The world outside the grand glass doors might have been loud with rumors, but inside, all eyes were on the altar, and the man waiting at the front. Julian Langston stood tall and composed in a navy-tailored suit, his hands folded in front of him. But his eyes never left the door. As she was coming. He, not anyone else. Not the loud ones, the liars, the ones who weaponized silence. She, who had once left without a word, was walking toward him again. The chapel doors opened. And Isla Whitmore stepped through. The entire room went still. She wore a silk ivory gown that whispered grace with every step. Her veil was long and sheer, catching the stained glass light like moonlight on water. Julian exhaled. She walked slowly, her steps measured, elegant, poised, the same way she had walked away once. But not today. Today she walked toward him. When she reached him, he took her hand. Hi, he whispered. Hi, she replied softly, her voice steady. The officiant smiled and opened his book. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. And then, a voice cut through the silence like a knife. Julian. Gasps rang out across the chapel. Heads turned. Cameras flashed. Vanessa. She stood in the doorway in a white sheath dress, bold and breathless, her makeup perfect and her expression furious. Julian, you can't do this, she screamed. I'm your fiancé. Security moved fast, intercepting her before she could take more than 3 steps into the chapel. She struggled against their grip. I wore the ring. You brought me to the gala. You can't just pretend that didn't happen. Guests murmured, some shocked, some smugly vindicated. Julian didn't even glance at her. Instead, he turned to the officiant and raised a calm hand. Hey, I. The officiant nodded and stepped back. Julian turned toward the crowd. I wasn't planning to speak before the vows, he said clearly, his voice even and sure, but I think this moment calls for clarity. The chapel stilled again. We all know about the rumors. About a ring, an engagement that was never real, and a claim made by someone who never had my heart. He looked directly at Isla, his voice gentler now. I designed that ring 2 years ago. With her in mind. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't announce it. I kept it quiet because I was afraid of public scrutiny, of turning something sacred into spectacle. But I should have known better. He turned back to the guest. The ring that woman wore? It was never hers. It was a replica of something meant for someone else. He looked at Isla again, only her. She was never the secret. She was the choice. The crowd erupted, softly at first. Gentle clapping. Then stronger. Warm. Affirming. Security finally pulled Vanessa from the room, her protests drowned in applause. Julian turned back to Isla. Now, he whispered, let's begin. The officiant resumed. Julian Langston, do you take Isla Whitmore? I do. Isla Whitmore, do you take Julian Langston? I do. You may kiss your bride. Julian didn't hesitate. He leaned in, both hands cupping her face, and kissed her with everything he hadn't said in years. It wasn't for show. It wasn't for redemption. It was for them. When they pulled apart, the chapel was on its feet. Applause thundered from every corner. A few guests even wiped away tears. Because they had witnessed not just a wedding, but a reckoning. Later that night, the reception buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music. Guests danced under golden chandeliers. The memory of the earlier drama now faded beneath the warmth of something real. Julian stood by the edge of the dance floor, watching Isla laugh with her childhood friend Harper. She glowed. Not because she wore white, but because she wore peace. He walked up behind her and slid his arm around her waist. Care to dance? She turned, smiling up at him. Always. They moved slowly, swaying in rhythm. No rush. No pressure. Just stillness shared between two people who had once almost lost it all. Today, Isla whispered, you told everyone. I should have told them years ago. She looked at him. Why now? Because I needed the world to know what I always knew, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. That I was never engaged to anyone but you. That no lie could ever replace you. She leaned into his chest. You called me the choice. You were, he murmured. Every single time. Much later. They sat together beneath the fairy lights outside the ballroom, his suit jacket draped over her shoulders. I can't believe she tried to crash the ceremony, Isla said, amused now. She tried, Julian replied. But we already started the forever part. Does this mean no more scandals? No more dramatic interruptions? Julian grinned. Can't promise that. But I can promise I'll never let anyone steal your place again. She looked at her hand, at the ring that finally rightfully was hers. You didn't have to say what you did today, she whispered. But you did. And I needed that. I needed it too, Julian said, pulling her close. Because for so long I loved you in silence. I needed to love you out loud. She kissed his cheek, then his lips. And in that moment the world went quiet. Not because it had nothing to say, but because it was done speaking. The truth had already been told. The right woman had walked down the aisle. And the man who once stayed silent had finally spoken. The end.